Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome Professor Anna Sparrman from the Department of Thematic Childhood Studies at Linköping University, and who is a keynote at the 2023 PESA Conference. So we've got a couple of questions to go over today, and the first one is, what do you think is the biggest challenge we face in education and/or philosophy of education today?
I think one of the big questions, also taking the topic of this conference, which is about starting from challenges in our societies, I think norms and values is something that is important. And it's important in the way that what is it that we want to teach children, and also what kind of norms and values do we have around children? How do we as adults think about children? And I think with all these big changes in the world, the notions of children and childhood are very important to think, and maybe also rethink together with knowledge, how we see children as knowledge producers, or how we see children as being receivers of knowledge, and also what we mean with knowledge. And I think these are really big questions, but I think if we take it from a larger perspective about how society looks, we need to bring these questions and issues into talking about education and children and philosophy around and with these terms, I think.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And you do that with the visual as well, don't you, in your research?
Yes, I do. And I also, one idea that I have in my research is that I try always to kind of question what we take for granted about certain things, and twist and turn it and reflect upon what do we mean with a child, for example. And can we mean the same thing today as we did yesterday even? Or do we have to kind of think about it and rethink it for the future so it becomes more sustainable being a child?
That's really interesting. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so our second question is, what role do you think philosophy of education has in responding to the challenges and/or uncertain times that we find ourselves in? So you were talking there about, the shifts of how we see children in time. Yeah. I wonder, do you think that's pertinent? Or?
Well, I think that, yeah, I think so. But I also think that if we talk about norms and values, I also think it's important to start to think about solidarity, because we have so many children moving around today between countries and between issues of the environment and so on. So I think we have to start to kind of take everyone into account in a different way. And I think I read a Swedish philosopher of ideas, and he usually talk about solidarity in the terms of how we need to train ourselves to see ourselves in and through others. And I think that's a very nice way of putting it, because in that way we create solidarity. And I think that's very important for philosophy of education, because I think they can help us to twist and turn concepts like solidarity, but also other concepts theoretically. And that we have a need for that. If we're going to be able to change something or transform something or capture these transitions we are in, I think we also have to rethink some of the concepts. And I think that's something that a field like this actually can do and help all of us with, to do this rethinking.
And so when you say the concepts, is that, like you were saying, around that image of the child, or where do you take it in other spaces as well?
Oh, yes, I think you can rethink everything that has with the teaching and pedagogics and education and so on to do, along with knowledge. We have had all these fake discussions and everything about fake knowledge and so on. So we also have to kind of come back to and talk about, what do we mean with knowledge today, for example. So I think this using the ideas from philosophy is very important to reflect on education in a large sense.
Yeah. And what do you think so about that fake knowledge? Does solidarity have a place to play there? Are you sort of talking about post-truth, or?
But that's what I mean. I think if one go with this notion, his name is Sven-Erik Lidman, this philosopher of ideas in Sweden, and I think that's if we start to look for ourselves in others or try to understand others through ourselves and so on, then that really creates a connection between people. And I think that's what we need. We need connection. We need to understand one another. I mean, Europe is full of people being in migration for all kinds of reasons today. And if we who are not, don't try to kind of look to them and try to understand them, it's going to be, we're going to keep on like just having, what should we call it? We're just going to have, we're going to isolate different groups of people, and that includes children in all this. So I think, yes, I think they really connect.
Yeah. I really like how what you're drawing on and doing with your research is that positive moving forward space. I think it's really nice, especially when people talk about challenges and uncertain times, that we start thinking of the future in more possibilistic ways.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think that's important. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, what do you think? Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about or add in the lead up to the PESA conference?
At the same time, as I say, I think this is all necessary to do. I don't think it's easy. Because I think it is about this, and this is also on the topic that I'm going to talk about in the conference about this. We need to unlearn, and this is a concept that I try to think with, because what does it mean to unlearn, and who needs to unlearn? I probably also need to unlearn to be able to think differently and so on. So I think this is quite important, and I think, yeah. I can't say where will this end, where will we be, but I think this challenge of twisting things around is really important.
So is that what you're?
Yeah, maybe I also think we have to have I don't know, to have a more generous, maybe, or it's very general to say that we have to have a more generous, but somehow have an understanding for children as complex beings. So I think when we put children, I do a lot of research in the cultural sector. Wow, and there we have one child. And when it comes to education, there is another child. And we kind of want to form them. But how can we help children to be complex beings that kind of bridge all the different places and spaces they are actually in? I think that's a really challenging thing to actually.
Yes. I've seen that as well with student education and student teacher education, and yes, the kind of conversations and research sometimes as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, did you want to share anything else with us about your keynote or any research you're doing at the moment?
Well, at the moment, I'm conducting research, trying to launch a concept called children's cultural heritage. And that is kind of relevant because it is about how we think about preserving children's cultural heritage, what children themselves do for the future. So we work together with this big archive in Sweden that has 700,000 child drawings. And I mean, drawings is something we ask children to do all the time. And this archive is not talking about it as being art, but actually as documents of children living in society. It can be school pictures that have been made, that have been sent into the archive and so on. But we're really trying to work on this, as seeing children as producers. And to see them as, when we say producers, it's not learners specifically. And it is not that they are agent or have agency or are agents, but that they actually produce something that we can save for the future, so that we can learn about children going back and see how did they look upon society. They have, for example, one of the newest collections they have is about COVID, how children made drawings about COVID. And it's really, really interesting to look at these pictures, but because you can see that children picked up everything that had to do with masks, loneliness, the virus, the visualization of the virus, everything is in there, actually.
Oh, wow.
So it's really interesting. So this is going to be documents that's going to be for the future, and we can see how did children draw and relate to what was going on in the society.
Oh, wow, that would be fascinating. We'll have to keep watching the space to find out what you do with it.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me today, and I'm really looking forward to your keynote.
Yes, thank you. I'm looking forward to coming to the conference.